All right, so I think we're all here. Good evening. So I just finished going over your assignments. You can have a look at the trade and my very short comments. Generally, I am suggesting that some of you have presented very extensive reviewed literature, others not so much, but uh, I am suggesting to all of you to continue and add more content to your RRL, to your review related literature, which is the subject matter for this evening's class, this evening's lecture. Okay, so let's go over how the RRL is supposed to uh, be developed. Okay, the RR the RRL is the longest chapter in a thesis in any research paper and the like, because the RRL is a summary of the entire research that you did. Okay, although it's supposed to be a research paper in economics, and by a research paper in economics, you have to make a focus. Okay, the focus is what you discuss in chapter 3 in your theoretical framework, where you have your hypothesis. You have your theoretical framework, which is one at most two theories, such that a conclusion from the theory is your research question. And you have your empirical model, which is an econometric model that you encountered in your review, in your research, that you've decided to adapt. And then you also will be discussing data requirements for you to run this econometric model. But although that is the main focus of your paper, you still have to report on the research that you did, and that is what you do with chapter 2, which is your review of related literatures, the summary of the research that you did. Okay, and as a summary, you organize it by themes, and there are three main themes. Okay, the first part would be the policy issues. Policy issues refer actually to the presentation, discussion of the data on your particular topic. Okay, and that would be data both here in the Philippines as well as in other countries. If your topic is on poverty, so say infrastructure decreases poverty rates, so your topic would be on poverty, then you present here the data on poverty, the various data on poverty, and they're presented in the form of tables, charts, graphs, and the like. Okay, the purpose of this is to point out that your topic is of current ongoing concern. Poverty is an ongoing concern. It has been an ongoing concern for decades. So here you'd show the data on poverty. Since you should be primarily be interested in showing the data to as proof that your particular topic is one of current social concern, then the rule of thumb I have here is that there should at least be 5 tables or charts of data to illustrate the issues. Okay. In your policy issues, you can also discuss current and proposed government policies on how to deal with the issue, but you don't need to discuss these policies in great detail. You can just present a sketch. It's more important to show the data, just to point out that the topic is of current social and economic concern, not just in the Philippines and other countries. It's an ongoing global issue. Okay. And you can also discuss there the fact that policies ongoing in the Philippines and proposed here in the Philippines may well have been influenced by policies from other countries, which you can also mention and discuss. But you don't need to discuss these policies in great detail. Okay? You can discuss these policies in great detail and place them in your appendix. Okay. Now, the second important theme is to discuss the theoretical issues. Okay. So they refer to the various theories explaining your topic. So if your topic again is infrastructure expenditure decreases poverty, you'll have to be discussing here the various theories that uh, explain factors that cause increase or decrease in poverty. Now, when you talk of theories in economics of the following characteristics. Okay, there's always an author or authors attached to it, and the year of the publication of the paper in which their theory was first presented. Okay. So you could have Harris Todaro migration model, okay, the Becker human capital theory. So you cannot say in your theoretical issues the human capital theory, there are many human capital theories, very many, and that's why you should be able to identify the author or author's name of the different theories that you encountered in your research. Okay? So that's one. The first characteristic of a theory in economics, there's an author. There's also an author. And citation is always the author year. So you just write there, Harris and Todaro, 1967. Okay, in parentheses, or Harris and Todaro, parentheses, 1967, discuss migration, that sort of thing. Okay. Hmm. The second characteristic of a theory in economics is that there is a mathematical model. Okay, so there should be equations and or graphs. Okay, and the equations would go as far as presenting the first order conditions to show whether the relationship between a particular factor is a positive or negative relationship with your topic in, say, poverty. Okay. My rule of thumb here is to look for at least 3 to 5 mathematical models. All right. In your theoretical issues, although it's a summary, you highlight the various theories, you describe them by themes. And so you highlight here, say, the 3 or 5 most important theories that you've encountered, most relevant to your particular research, but you make mention of all the others as well. Okay. And in mentioning them, you also cite them in your bibliography. Okay. And then the third aspect would be your empirical issues. Okay. The empirical issues, okay, now present various econometric models, the data sets that they use, and the results, models with regards to your topic. Again, if your topic is poverty, then this section here is a summary of the presentation of the econometric models that dealt with poverty. Okay. The econometric model would have the following characteristics: author or authors in the year, um, in which the model was published. A presentation of the reduced form equation, okay, and the presentation of the model results in table form to show which ones are significant and then what the explanations were. Okay. Now, as far as econometric models are concerned, there's a huge difference between the econometric models that were published before 1995 and those that were published since 2005. Okay, because before 1995, the computing capacity at the time was not very strong, which is why most econometric models tended to have only 2 to 3 regressors. Okay? And most of the papers at the time spent a lot of time discussing, say, the original reduced form that was consistent with the structural model. But if the reduced form, say, had 8 regressors, then they spent a lot of time proving that this reduced form equation with 8 regressors would have another reduced form equation as an equivalent if that particular equation has just 2 to 3 regressors, because computing capacity was so limited that you cannot have too many regressors and not too much data. So say 2 to 3 regressors and about minimum 35 uh, data observations that would be valid already to do econometric work. And much of the econometrics, again, involved the justification of showing that this equation with 3 regressors is the equivalent of the original one, which is 8. Okay. Which is why you go through several different stages, like you have a 2-stage least squares, 3-stage least squares, and so on and so forth. Okay. But computing capacity began to increase in 1995. Okay. And then you also have the development of more and more software. Okay. So you now had econometric models with that can go as many as 8 regressors and the like, and most of them using just OLS. But it went further up in 2005 with the huge increase in computing capacity, the development of uh, of laptops with the huge memory and storage capacity and software like Stata and Gretel. So now you can have econometric models with 28 regressors and and 3,000 observations and the like, which is why in doing your review of econometric models, I would suggest that you try to focus on papers that were published since 2005, okay? Because a lot of the software nowadays can handle large data sets and very large econometric model with several regressors. And it used to be in older papers that when you present a reduced form equation, you present the equation itself. But nowadays, because you can put in several regressors, they now tend to be presented in tabular form. So you have here, say, reduced form equations, dependent variable, the independent variables there. Then they indicate in the second column the data used, and in the third column the expected sign. And then in another table they present the results and they indicate the signs and the significance. Okay, the practice is that Putting in three asterisks means that your result is significant at 0.01. Two asterisks, it's significant at 0.05. One asterisk is it's significant at 0.1. Okay. And the ones that are really significant are the ones at the 0.05 to 0.01 level. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Any questions as of the moment? Okay, this review of literature is the summary. Now, I went through your papers, and one of the things I noticed is that, well, for nearly all of you, you've done a good deal of research. Some did far more than the others. I suggest you proceed. Keep in mind that most of you also presented your initial hypothesis, your proposed theoretical framework and empirical model. Keep in mind that you can change these later. What I'm doing right now is as a matter of exercise to keep you working on doing your research and writing about it. Okay, and the thing also that I would like to impress upon all of you, I did not mention it anymore in the individual comments on your paper since we're going to have a class right now. I'd like to impress upon you the importance of this early, also mastering the format rules and the style requirements. Okay, this is especially the case for those among you who will be writing your thesis, your doctoral or your masteral thesis. Okay, there's a very, very strict and very, very specific style guideline. Okay, so there is particular rules with regards to the table heading. Okay, or figure heading. Keep in mind always table heading. There's the table number and the title of the table below. Okay, and those are the only things. The only things that are bold are indicated in your this particular thesis, in this particular syllabus here. There it says that the only things bold-faced are the chapter, appendix, headings, and titles, which are all caps. Okay. The titles of tables, figures, and charts, which are caps and lowercase, and subsection headings. And the subsection headings are these. Okay. Policy issues, theoretical issues, empirical issues, hypothesis, theoretical frame. Those are the only subsection headings. Please do not add to them and start putting them in bold or putting them in italics. Do not do that, please. Follow the format as strictly as possible. Okay. And here are certain format rules and the like. Okay. Tables, charts, figures, equations are all numbered. Okay. Now, the numbering goes this way. In policy issues where you have tables and charts, okay, you always have table 2.1, which is the first table in chapter 2. Okay. Figure 2.4 is the fourth figure in chapter. Okay. Those are the two main classifications of illustrations, either tables of data or a figure, where a figure can be a pie chart, a bar chart, a graph, a map, or so. Okay, so they are all numbered. When we get to chapter 3, if there are tables there, then the numbering now becomes chapter 3.1, table 3.1, figure 3.4, and the like, okay? Next is that equations are also numbered. You will have a lot of equations in your theoretical issues and also possibly in your empirical, if you're able to present your reduced form in the form of an equation. Okay, you number equations again. Equations are numbered this way. It's 2.3, the third equation in chapter 2. 2.4, the fourth equation in chapter. What makes this numbering compact is that when you make reference, you just say things like, okay, by equation 2.17 here. Now, substitution of 2.17 to 2.10 to 2.15 yields this result. So you have a new equation 2.18. So you keep on making reference to the equations by their numbers. And that makes your discussion and your presentation more compact and more concise. Okay, so just to move towards the main discussion points in our next class. The review of related literature, therefore, allows you to focus on a very particular conclusion, on a very particular factor. So if you're studying poverty, you'd be focusing on one particular factor that you encountered in your review, say infrastructure expenditure decreases poverty rates, okay, which you obtain from a particular theory, or at most two theories. Okay. Now, in your theoretical framework, okay, the theoretical framework here is supposed to be, sorry, it should be B. See, I should change that. Your theoretical framework here, you discuss here the theory which came from your review of literature, but it's discussed in a more focused way. The detailed theory would be in chapter 2, but here you only discuss a portion of that theory that you focused upon. Okay, you show the mathematical equations that deals with that particular factor, as say the infrastructure and poverty. Okay, and then your methodology here. Now you discuss the econometric model that you obtained from your review. Okay, so there's one econometric model there that you obtained from your review. Again, keep in mind that is how we do our work in economics. We do not create our own models. You can do that later when you really are a professional economist or econometrician and you really want to be involved here. I never bothered to. Okay, there are some who do try to develop their own econometric models, but in most instances, you just usually adapt somebody else's econometric model. The reason for that is out of convenience, because by adapting that econometric model, okay, the presumption in neoclassical economics and in econometrics and statistics is that the theories and models are applicable to any country at any time and place, which is why by adapting an econometric model that has been run for another country and which has results, you can therefore compare your results with that particular model. And that allows for greater structure in your discussion. Okay? You can also point out there which particular results were consistent with the source model and which were quite different. And then that's part of the things that you explain, why they were the same, the results were the same, and why there's a difference. So there's something different in the structure of the economy of the Philippines as compared to that country and the like. So this is what you do in your methodology. Okay. And also, you discuss your data sources. When you might encounter an econometric model that you actually thought worthwhile doing, but if it turns out that that econometric model requires the use of several data sets which are not available in the Philippines, you might have to look for some other model. Okay. And of course, you adapt the econometric model for your purposes. Adaptation means that's very often the precise data definition, and the definition of the variable might need some modification. Okay, because of various reasons like the availability of the data here, or data that might be represented by another type of a concept. Okay, for example, in many studies on economic equality, um, especially those studies coming from the USA, okay, one of the regressors usually is race. Okay. They try to find out if race, okay, plays a significant role in explaining inequality in the distribution of income, the USA, and like, okay, now you cannot do that here in the Philippines. Okay? It's not that we are not racist, on the contrary, we are. We are racist here in the Philippines, but our racism may be quite different from the type of racism that is practiced in the USA. But the really, really important reason why you cannot have a model with race in it is that we don't have race data. We do not track race. Okay. So you can drop it, or what you can do is that the race variable is supposed to represent a particular factor that is supposed to have a systematic relationship with inequality, in that this particular factor has a very important role to play in determining differences in incomes earned in the United States. Race is supposed to play that particular role. Okay. You can argue that here in the Philippines, that could be played by, say, religion or ethnicity. Okay. Like some people who have a Visayan accent might not be hired for certain types of jobs and the like, okay? Or those who are Muslim, okay? And we do have data on that. We collect that data so that you can adapt your econometric model and to take that into consideration. Okay? Right. So if you just give me a minute or two, please. All right, so as of this stage, I have covered the subject matter I was planning to work on for for this evening's lectures. So right now, I'm willing to entertain any questions that you might have with regards to your papers. Okay, because if there are no more questions or comments, okay, that's it. We'll be meeting again in 2 weeks' time, I think. I can check just a minute. Our next synchronous meeting is March the 22nd. Okay. I'd like to thank Ms. Relos for reminding me the meeting tonight. I thought our synchronous meetings next week, it turns out to be this evening. So nakahapon. Okay. So any questions or comments? Okay. In all your papers again, my note there is continue working on it, continue doing your research, and keep in mind that you can make changes in your research question, your hypothesis, your theoretical framework, and your empirical model. At least for nearly all of you, this stage, you already have some idea that you need a particular theory and a particular econometric model to adapt. All of you have done that. So you can still make changes as you proceed with your research. No need to ask for my permission. It's for you to make that decision. But I'm saying though, for many of you, you might need to do some more research with regards to your RRL. Okay? Two or three have done a lot of work already with RRL. I say proceed, continue doing the research. But at the same time, for all of you, please um, pay attention to the format. Okay? Try and discipline yourself to follow the format correctly, especially when it comes to your bibliography and bibliographic citation. Again, keep in mind that when you do your bibliography, you try to do it this early. Okay, you already put it in a file and make sure that every bibliographic citation is single spaced and hanging format. Okay, there is uh, there is a double spacing in between citations. And also, we no longer put quotation marks on titles of articles and no more. We don't put quotation marks anymore. Neither uh, do we put parentheses on the years and the like. Okay, remove the parentheses and quotation marks in every bibliographic citation. Okay, and this early, try to do that already. Start working on your bibliographic citations and discipline yourself in terms of the format so that from henceforth, you're building your bibliography. Whenever you encounter a paper and the like, and you'll include it in your bibliography, it's just a question of putting it in the right place, alphabetizing your bibliographic entries and the like. Okay. Okay, so if there are no questions or comments, I
Sir,
suppose any questions?
sir, I have a question. Sir,
Hmm.
in case for study interview is required, do we still need to write the interview in the or put the interview in the appendices, sir?
Yes, you have to. Um, Generally, as sa economics, we do not put much emphasis on interviews because the the value of the work in economics has to do with your econometric model, the results, and the analysis. Okay, in sociology and the like, interview is a major source of data. Okay, so that normally, if you needed to do an interview, okay, the summary of that is among the things that you discuss in your body, but the interview itself, the transcript, you include it in your appendix. Okay, and when you do your interview, you have to inform your interviewee that that everything that he or she says will be recorded, presented in the thesis, and the like, mainly in the appendix, but you would summarize it in the body. So it would be up to the interviewee if he'll be willing to. Okay. I
Thank you,
actually
sir.
do not know why you need to do interviewing because economics nga, the bulk of data and analysis are not so much coming from interviews, surveys, and the like, but largely secondary data. But yeah, you can proceed.
Thank you, sir.
Usually, interviews are done in order to confirm or verify some of your conclusions. For example, like there were studies before, lalo na central bank behavior, central bank policy, and they say that the data seem to suggest that the central bank has been trying to do an inflation targeting policy and the like. And then you can interview someone from the BSP to try and confirm if indeed they were into inflation targeting, which is what you noticed from your econometric results. That's usually what interview is that would do in papers in economics. Okay,
Okay po. Thank you, sir.
you're welcome. Right, any more questions or comments? Okay, I'll be posting the link on the recording of this. And again, please keep in mind that you would have to download the video and the link within 2 weeks because Zoom will be deleting it. Although they say 30 days, I noticed even in 2 weeks' time, they already deleting. Okay, so if there are no more questions or comments, I'd say good evening. I'll see you in about 2 weeks' time. Okay. And for your next paper, I'll just await them. I've already returned with your paper with my what is called in Canvas formative assessment, meaning to say that the grade there will not count against your grade in the course because your grade in the course will be largely determined by your reader. Okay. Right. So if there are no more questions, I'd say good evening. I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much for your patience. Okay, my pleasure, Mr. Blanco. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. So good evening. I'll see you around. Bye.
Thank you,